Welcome to the Inside Carolina podcast. I am your host, Tommy Ashley. I am joined by Jason Staples and Buck Sanders. That means it is the day after podcast, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. Rate us and review us. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or however you consume your podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, click the subscribe link to get all this stuff delivered straight to your smartphone or whatever, however you get it, because you're going to want to hear this one, folks. Buck, a lot of talk about doing this podcast last night. Full disclosure, it's 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. I didn't want to do it last night because I didn't know what to say. I had no idea what to say. And Buck, I feel the same way now, roughly 15 hours later. What saith you?
Well, if I was a Miami fan, I would quote Manny Diaz and Derek King and say we got our ass kicked. And that's just the plain and simple of it, really. North Carolina, came off the bus, with both guns out of the holster and just didn't stop until it was over with. And I
think they came with some heavier duty stuff than guns yesterday.
Howitzers, so who knows? I knew, and I think everybody knew, that North Carolina was capable of winning this game. Two teams were close enough that we could see it being a 28-25 win like last year. We knew that Miami was a much improved team offensively than they were a year ago, although they only managed to score one more point than they did last year. But I don't know, and we'll talk about the offensive fireworks, but the defense played exceptionally well. They played really, really well. They held Miami to like 317 yards, 2.8 a carry, running the ball. At Grimes' interception, and we should talk about that at some point, because I think that's got major implications going forward, the way he intercepted that pass. So, I don't think any of us expected to see what we saw, and explains our loss of words last night to talk about it. At one point, I didn't even care what Miami did. They could score or not score, because I knew they had to kick the ball back to North Carolina at some point, and they'd just be off to the races again. So that's how the game got for me. I was looking at the GameCast coverage of it this morning, actually, and I think somewhere near the end of the first quarter, GameCast had North Carolina with 100% probability of win, or 99.8 or whatever it was by like the end of the first quarter. Just congratulations to the team, Michael Carter and Javante. It was impressive that they could do that without any Sam Howell heroics. Just hats off to them. They just played their butts off, and Miami did not. So
your comment right there at the end is how I'll take it to Jason. Jason, if Sam Howell would have thrown for 550 yards and Carolina would have scored 62 points and they won in a shootout, I could have seen that. I could have, that's the kind of game we all thought would happen. But 554 yards rushing and 308 and 236, Carolina just didn't win. And this is the statement, and we can talk about this in the second half of the show. But Carolina walked in there and took Miami's manhood and just beat them senseless with those two guys. That's why I'm at a loss for words. I have never seen that from a North Carolina football team. Maybe the Gator Bowl back in 97, 98 where they beat Virginia Tech after Mack left, but I have never seen
not that. No, not this level of physical domination and this level of just we're gonna stand in the middle of the ring, invite you in here, and then we're just gonna first round knockout. And then the thing is, the unfortunate thing for you is that the official is not going to call this fight in the first round. You're going to get knocked down 4 times in the first round, going to be, carried back to your corner, and then you're gonna have to come out for round 2.
That analogy breaks down at some level, but I take your point.
But I mean this was a again, I'll just say back in my day and still carrying forward, the book on North Carolina football was always, and this is what opponents have said, and everybody knows, every Carolina fan knows that this is used in recruiting pitches against North Carolina, is they're as soft as that baby blue. You hit them in the mouth, and they don't like that very much.
They look good at the airport.
Yeah, those guys, they're a good team. They've always got good skill guys. They've even got some guys on both sides of the line of scrimmage, but they're just, it's a baby blue team. What are you going to expect? That's what you hear, right? That's what different teams will say. Well, what we saw last night or yesterday afternoon was not a soft. Well, we did see a soft football team, but it wasn't the ones wearing blue, right? That was a physical team that decided we're gonna be the more physical team, and we're going to come in and we're gonna challenge your physicality because we don't think you're physical. And that's the next. I mean, if Carolina can harness that part of what we saw yesterday, that's a big part of becoming a championship level bully. Is you've got to be a bully. You look at the teams that consistently blow teams out, and then because 8 or 9 games a year are just not close because of it, those are teams that come in and physically impose their will on you as a football team. And that's what we saw from North Carolina last night. Now, can they sustain that? I can tell you right now that this is what Mack Brown and the coaching staff are going to be telling those guys. That right there, what you guys just did, that's the standard that we've been trying to hold y'all to. That right there, let's get to that standard and take that attitude into every game. Now, it is easier. Hat tip to Mike Ingersoll, who knows the other big stereotype that everybody who plays this team except for a rival knows is Miami is a bunch of front runners, and you hit them in the mouth and you knock them down a couple times early, and they have historically struggled to respond to that in the last couple decades. And we talked about this in the Game Plan podcast. It's like, look, if Carolina comes out and hits those guys in the mouth and goes up, 14 points early and all of that, then all bets are off because that team might fold. We talked about that, and, hat tip to Mike Ingersoll then. But, man, I don't think any of us expected to see Miami fold like that. I mean, they just had it was one of those things. It was clear they had no interest in tackling North Carolina's running backs. And they didn't have a whole lot of interest in meeting that offensive line in space either. So, yeah, 700 looking at it now, 778 total yards, 554 rushing yards. That is embarrassing, folks. And I do want to just call attention to another thing. Think about this from my perspective. Duke lost yesterday. Florida lost yesterday at home to blow any chance of a hope at the college football playoff. Miami got absolutely embarrassed. And then at the hands of UNC, and for the first time all year, my alma mater looked kind of like they should on at least one side of the ball. So my other alma mater, I've got 2 alma maters. So you think about this from my perspective, did we just turn the corner in 2020? Right? I mean, are things headed the right direction now? Because look, in a weekend when Florida, Miami, and Duke all lose, I feel like something's going right in the cosmos right now. Like looking at how things, looking at what North Carolina did to Miami, that was the first sign we might be moving into better territory, guys. The vaccine stuff might be coming a little bit more promising than than what anybody's thinking. It might come quicker because this stuff right here, that was a good afternoon.
Certainly a bright spot on a Saturday afternoon. But Jason mentioned a couple things. I mean, to me, the biggest thing that came out of this game is that Carolina just they didn't flash Miami. They pounded Miami, and they've done it a lot this year. But let's talk about some specific plays. But we talked about off the air. So I'm pretty pessimistic, and I think a lot of people know that. And I didn't think the game was over for a while. So one sequence led me to believe this might be over, and that was the first drive of this third quarter. Buck, I mean, I've been waiting 49 years to see Carolina man up and play that kind of football, and then they come out there and do that against Miami, and pretty much tell Miami, any hope you've got, bud, right here it goes, and just pound them on a 7+ minute drive. Again, never seen anything like it, Buck. Help me understand what we just saw in that sequence, because that was different from Carolina football.
And there was a specific moment in that sequence that we're talking about, and if people don't know, it's that run by Javonte Williams. There was a specific snapshot moment in that sequence that, imparted that same feeling to me that you had that this is over. And that's when a Miami guy tried to tackle Javonte, and Javonte basically knocked him out of his shoes. I mean, just both feet left the ground, the tackler did, when Javonte hit him.
And that was one of Miami's hitters now. That was one of their guys that has a reputation of being a hitter. And it doesn't get that you're not going to see a more Javonte run than that Javonte Williams run.
Yeah, I mean, he did some spectacular stuff before that. He hurdled a guy. He did some amazing stuff. I think it may have been Gregory Hall that tweeted something like, he couldn't even make a player do that playing Madden.
Yeah.
He stole that guy's soul, man.
And so, that specific moment in time when Javonte hit that guy, I had kind of the same thought that you did, is that there's no coming back from this. You're just not going to come back from that to get just basically humiliated about 5 times during that run, punctuated by, knocking a guy like 5 feet in the air just trying to tackle you. It was amazing. So, yeah, I was right there with you, Tommy, on the back-breaking moment that was Javonte's run there in the middle of the third quarter.
How many plays from this game, guys, are going to wind up on the Kenan Stadium introductory video for years to come?
Yeah, I don't know, a bunch. And
a few.
As physical as, and I want to come back to this point because I think it can get lost talking about this game. But there are some physical dudes on the defensive side of the ball for North Carolina too. Jacurious Conley, people are going to hate to get on the field with him. I mean, he's a beast. He is going to mess some people up. He just is. I mean, he's just a really physical guy. He left the game. I hear that he's okay. I think his dad may have tweeted out that he didn't break anything. The x-rays were negative or what have you. But, I mean, not only is he a big guy, to be playing safety, but he uses every bit of that bigness when he hits people. Yep. And guys like that, I mean, one of the things that we're looking at on the defensive side of the ball is Clyde Pender had a sack. Conley had a sack. Grimes had a spectacular pick. I mean, those guys playing on defense, I looked at the defensive stats, and, you get your name on the list if you've done something, if you made a tackle or whatever. And the only 2 people that scratched on that,
Right.
made that list that aren't coming back next year or maybe won't be coming back are Surratt and Tamon Fox. Everybody else on that list, they're back, and a lot of them are freshmen. So I think, we talked about how Miami's offense got a lot better this year. I think by the end of the season, we saw glimmers of North Carolina's defense getting a lot better. And hats off to those guys. And I don't think Bateman had to blitz nearly as much as he normally does. I think he was getting good pressure. We're just using 4 guys. They clearly frustrated King. That's another thing that comes into the mix. How often have we seen, a random Quincy Patterson, or somebody come out and run for 200 yards on North Carolina from the quarterback position? They hardly gave King anything. I mean, he played his heart out, but, they fenced him in pretty much the whole game. So I do want to not lose sight of how well the defense played against a much improved team in Miami offensively.
Well, you teed it up again for me perfectly because I was going there. And a great point on the defensive stat sheet. Surratt at the top with 10 tackles, a couple breakups. One of the breakups was just ridiculously good reaction by him that saved a first down pass. And then Tamon Fox had a half sack, half tackle for loss, and 1 QB hurry. Everybody else is back. And Jason, with everybody else being back, and for the record, I think the defense turned the corner. I guess it was the Wake Forest game when they said, we're riding with Tony Grimes at corner. And that sort of changed things. But Grimes' interception, Jason, break it down, because he was beat. He was beat on that play, and he makes a play that was another one of those moments. Was like, this one's over. This is over.
Yeah. So a couple things. One is, you'll remember from the game plan podcast, I said if Jay Bateman held this Miami offense in this game to 25 points, then he and the whole defensive staff needed to get steak dinners.
Steak dinners, yeah.
For a week. If I'm Mack Brown, I just say, you know what? That 1 point's on the house because the game was really high paced and the offense scored so much that they were gonna.
They had a couple of 2-point conversions too, so
yeah. So those guys, that defense, earned their steaks. I mean, they took care of business, and the reason that this game got out of hand early is that they got those key stops in the first quarter, and. Miami's offense and this Malzahn branch, the Lashley offense, his particular fork of the Malzahn offense, but a lot of the Malzahn family of offenses tend to be offenses that once they get rolling and they get some momentum, it can be real trouble. And especially you get that quarterback run that's a big threat, and the quarterback starts doing his thing, and then you have to adjust to that, and then they've got the counter to that, and then all of a sudden just things are spiraling, and they, all of a sudden they're putting up 55, 60 points. But on the flip side, if you can stop them from being able to do some of the base stuff they want to do early and reverse that momentum and take the physical to them a little bit, you can sometimes get that the other way. And Carolina managed to do that. So before I even get to Grimes' interception, talk about those. One of the plays that really stood out to me was the tackle for loss by Conley early. I think it was the third drive. When I saw that tackle for loss that then gave them I think it was a 2nd and 17 play after that. Those are the circumstances. That's the leverage where a defense is going to be at a huge advantage, and especially against a team that does not do a lot of drop back passing. And so they were able on those first 3-4 series, they were able to stop the run by and large. I mean, King got some, 8-10 yard runs here and there, but those were stopped at 8-10 yards. Nothing was a big play. And then they were able to guess right a few times. It was clear that they were really prepared on tendencies that, oh, this guy's coming in motion. I'm triggering now. and I'm getting that tackle for loss. And there were a few of those where they were able to get into the backfield and make some tackles for loss in the running game that changed the game. It changed the whole complexion of the game because they handled their business on the offense or on the defensive side. And then the offense, of course, scored 28 points in that first frame. So at that point, you're able to do all those other things. And so then they have to challenge you downfield and they have to start playing catch up. And that's when the Grimes interception comes in. And I agree with you that I think the defense by and large started to turn a corner when Grimes became the second corner there, partly because so much of what any defense wants to do, and especially a coordinator like Bateman, who wants to be able to do a lot of different things and show you different looks and it's this, but it's not, these sorts of things that he likes to do. You can't really mess around too much when your corners can't cover. When you can't reliably sit there and say, okay, let's go ahead and circle those two guys. Those guys are out of play. You guys just do your job. And then everybody else we can play with. But those two, when you can circle those guys and say, we're going to handle business there. And we're not afraid of them just shelling us on the outside. The whole defense can change, and he has freedom to call what he wants. And Kyler McMichael on that early, They tried to Miami early in this game tried to challenge the corners deep, challenge North Carolina's secondary deep. They wanted to run the football and challenge you deep. And we talked about that. You brought up the quote, Tommy. I think it was you or Greg read the quote where it was, we want to run the football. We run the football to win, run the football. What did Lashley say? We
run to win, pass the score, or something like that.
Yeah. Run to win, pass the score. Well, they tried to do that. They tried to run the football and then throw over the top to get a few cheap scores. And McMichael, first time they tested him, he nearly picked it off. It was slightly underthrown, but he was right there. Made up the ground, got both hands on the football, and that sent a message. Your guy can't run by me, right? And your quarterback can't throw it past me. All right. And then Grimes, when they tested him, yeah, you're right. He was initially in perfect coverage. And then he tried to look back for it because he was in phase, and that's when you look back for the ball. And then he got a little separated, right? And once that separation happened, he's out of phase. It's like, just a little bit out. The thing that stands out to me is he didn't panic. And this has been a mantra of mine the last couple of years. This is something Dre Bly has done a fantastic job of with his corners, is when you're a little beat on those deep routes, you just cannot panic. Because it's when you panic as a corner and you then try to rush in and, close the gap too quickly and all that, then you get a pass interference, and any positive outlook on the play is gone. So, the thing you have to persuade your corner when you're coaching them, and it's not just telling them this, it's getting them to buy in and do it. And that's the thing. It's repping it enough in practice to where they do this right. Okay, you're out of phase because you're not always going to be in phase. There are going to be times where a guy's going to be behind you. Out of phase again means your hips are behind his hips, essentially. You're trailing. All right, so now what do you do? Well, there's two possibilities here. One is that the quarterback leads him just enough and he puts it out there, and now it's, that guy's going to run to the ball, and you just have to make up any ground you can and tackle him from behind, right? So just keep running. Two is the quarterback underthrows a little bit, and he's going to have to come back, and he's going to have to come back through you. So you got to get your eyes on that guy's hips so that if you see him start to put the brakes on a little bit, now you start to put the brakes on yourself and you find his hands. And that's the thing that well-coached DBs do, is they don't run right through the guy as though like, oh no, it's panic. Their eyes are still disciplined. You're still watching him to see, is he putting the brakes on? All right, he's putting the brakes on. That means that ball's underthrown. So now I got to put my brakes on a little bit so I don't run through him. And now I got to find his hands. So now I know that the brakes are on, find his hands, and then get my hands up through him. And then, what you're supposed to do is just punch through the ball, basically. But in some cases, if that guy gets his hands on the ball and all that, then you've got your eyes and your hands there. Now be the bigger man, wrestle that ball away. And that's what Grimes did, step by step, out of phase, like you said, beat, but he showed the catch-up speed. And then to me, this is the thing. You just don't see many freshmen, let alone guys that are supposed to be in high school, that don't panic there, that are on an island, they're beat, doesn't panic, gets his eyes in the right discipline, shows that he trusts his coaching and says, I'm going to get my hands here. I'm not going to interfere. I'm going to wrestle for this ball. Oh, whoa. I got the ball. All of that. It's the physical tools and, more importantly, the discipline of doing all that correctly that leads to that. And again, when you've got two corners that can cover, that can take receivers away, that are not just going to get beat deep, that aren't going to get run by, everything changes for your defense, because you can add that extra guy to the run a little bit. You can bring an extra guy in pressure. You can do all these things without going, well, it's 50-50 that my corner gets run by for a touchdown here.
It changes the game. Absolutely.
Yeah. My take on that interception, far less technical and far less probably accurate than Jason's. But here's kind of how I see it a little bit, is that there are different varieties of interceptions, right? Some guy just makes a great read, jumps a route, and he's, happens to be somewhere the quarterback didn't expect him to be. Funny sign. So on YouTube, you won't see the sign on the radio version, but anyway, and then, there's a quarterback that misreads the safety in coverage. The safety gets over there and makes a catch. And so you got to worry about those kinds of interceptions. But when you throw the ball to one of your better receivers downfield against a corner, and what should be a 50-50 ball turns into an interception, that is going to damper your enthusiasm for going back to that guy again. You're going to be wait a minute, I'm not really sure I want to throw a 50-50 ball, even though I've got a lot of confidence in my receiver, because as much confidence as I got in my receiver, I'm also scared to death of that corner that, he's if it's a 50-50 ball, it might be more 80-20 towards him. So I may not go down that road again once I've had that experience. As I threw it to my best wide receiver, great hands, 50-50 ball, and he didn't get it. The other team did. So I think that sort of cuts into your playbook at that point, and prevents you from doing some of the things you'd like to do, like throw it deep, as Jason was saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Dre Bly and Robert Williams did in Mack Brown's best teams. I mean, you take it away, and you could see King a lot of times. He'd drop back and look at a guy and realize it was not there, and it was an, oh, you know what moment, and then he's got pressure coming at him. Just a couple housekeeping things, looking at the stats, and I don't know if everybody has access to all the official stats, but listen to these numbers, guys. Time of possession in the second half, 25-45 for Carolina, 4:15 for Miami. Time of possession in the third quarter, in winning time or ending time for North Carolina, 13:59 to 1:01. In the third quarter, Carolina had the ball 14 minutes. Jason, it goes back.
And overall, it was like 40-20, right?
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
Just unbelievable. Jason, we're going to come back after the break and talk about the long term.
Defense taking care of business, folks. That's when you see that disparity, that's the defense.
Yeah. I mean, rush yards in the third quarter only. Carolina 213, Miami zip. I mean, Jason, you've watched Carolina and you've broken it down, and I can't wait to see some of your breakdowns from this game. But to me, it looked like what Buck talked about. You've got corners that can shut the field down. Did you see anything differently Bateman was doing, especially throughout the game? But in this time, it just looked to me like he was able to call the game for his front seven, extremely comfortable that his defensive backfield was going to keep it in check, except for one play to Brevin Jordan. And look,
He's going to get his.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's a stud. And
yeah.
The fact that he only got one was shocking to me. But did Bateman do anything differently in this one, Jason?
Not really to my eye. It's just straight up that they executed.
Yep.
I mean, I bet you, and this is something I might do since we got a little time, and I'm planning on doing more than 1 week's worth of video breakdowns of this game. I think it's worth.
There's a lot of material there to break down, isn't there?
Yeah, there's some things to have some fun with on this one, but you know, I bet you if you go back and you look at what they did against Miami last year defensively, that it's almost exactly the same kinds of things. If you're looking at down and distance, I mean, it's a different offense. They're running a different offense, but down and distance and formationally, if they're in the same formation and the same down and distance, it's very similar calls. And the same thing all year. I mean, he didn't do a whole lot that was unexpected, but what changed is both corners took care of business. So I mean, you got to remember there was when the defense was struggling the most this year, it was when McMichael was not available, when Renee was not available or was still hobbled some, and when Storm Duck was out. So you didn't have any of those guys, and 20 Grimes was not ready. So you're looking at when they had the most trouble on defense, they didn't have corners they could trust. Not like that. Then you get McMichael and Grimes out there playing like they played yesterday, and all of a sudden you feel like you can cover just about anybody, and you're not worried about getting run by, and you can do the only difference is that they could be a little freer bringing that extra safety up or bringing the backer, telling the backer to trigger on some things because they felt comfortable there. So that's the number one thing, is that teams weren't just beating them on the outside. But the number two thing is just on personnel, the guys that could execute. Conley made a huge difference in this game. I mean, I don't think that can be emphasized too much. His ability to be an extra linebacker in the run game and an extra safety in the pass game, and we said coming into this game that their biggest matchup, the biggest issue is going to be Brevin Jordan and those tight ends, Jordan and Mallory, and that they needed to find a way to match up, and that you'd probably have to see a big game from Conley. He was a guy that, like, look, if they're something, if you remember, I said, look, if this is in the game plan podcast, they're going to have success. You're going to have Murphy, Conley, and Grimes all play to the level that they need to play at. Those guys need to flash. They need to show out. Because if those guys do it, then you're starting to see the pieces that actually can play physically at the level that you need to beat a Miami team on defense. And that helps everybody else around them. Well, Conley came out and made a statement from the beginning. I'm here. I'm not a matchup. It's not a mismatch against me when you put Brevin Jordan out there and he has the ball in the open field. I'm making that tackle, and I'm coming up like a heat-seeking missile, and I'm making the tackle with confidence and with physicality. Oh, really? So you can be like that tonight, right? And then you get the tackle for loss on the
second drive. Miami's
second drive, second or third, yeah. And then you get there was another one where he came up and made a huge hit. I don't remember which drive it was, but it was one of those. You know, it was like, oh, that's a physical play right there, and that's a freshman. And you started seeing those things, and it's like, okay, the guys that they would potentially want to pick on because they're freshmen, those guys are not a problem. And then you started seeing some of the things where King would drop back, and just like we said needed to happen, he would drop back and you'd see the arms. There weren't any deflections that I can remember, but he was uncomfortable. The defensive tackles were able to get some compression. They were able to get some wins up front, and that allowed them. This is the biggest thing. And Buck, I think you said it earlier, Bateman didn't have to blitz a bunch. If you're able to get pressure with 4, and then you've got 2 corners that can really cover,
you can do a lot of things.
Then you're on your way to being not just a good, but an elite defense. That's elite defenses are defenses that can stop the run on first down and then can get pressure on the quarterback with 4 and have two corners that can take away the outside receivers. That's an elite defense.
Yep. Carolina saw it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And that's what you're looking for. Now, they didn't quite show out to the level of elite, but they showed little signs of, get a few other pieces here, get a little growth, and elite might be within reach within a couple years. And that was something. And I have to think, by the way, Miami might have known what was coming here. Might have known before the rest of us. They might have had some inkling that this was going to be what it was, because they did come to this game dressed for a funeral. So
you've seen that tweet too, I guess, from Barstool, where they showed the uniforms they came out with, and I guess the guy covers Miami for Barstool, and he said that if you were North Carolina and you saw Miami come out in those uniforms, you just get back on the bus and go home and call it a season. And
I'm thinking they took that a different way. Oh, you guys are coming for your own funeral, huh? Well, that's nice. You came dressed in black and mourning and all this, because you're gonna need that black later.
Yeah, I resisted the urge heavily to tweet that very early on, because, like I said earlier, I've been down that road way too much. Let's take a break. We're going to come back and talk about the long-term implications of this win and this season for North Carolina football. But first, I'm going to talk about Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. It's almost Christmas time. We're getting close, folks. You need to send your money to Johnny T-Shirt and get all the Carolina gear you need. They are wonderfully alumni-owned and operated, and they're great friends of Inside Carolina and this podcast. And, of course, if they're sponsors of us, that means they care about our listeners, our readers. They care about Buck. They care about Jason and me. So we need to care about them the same way and shop there. 10% off your order if you're an Inside Carolina premium subscriber. If you are not, you need to ask for it for Christmas if you're not. At some point, you got to get on the bus. The bus is leaving the station. I think I heard Wallace Expressway from my buddy Joey Powell many times yesterday. You want to be on that bus. North Carolina football about to take off. Carolina basketball, they'll get that figured out. But Johnny T-Shirt, regardless, will have you clothed and set up for whatever you need to do. Take a short break. Let the national guys pay the bills. Come back on the Day After podcast. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Buck and Jason. We'll be right back. All right, boys. Buck, come back to you. Come back to where I started. Carolina has put themselves in position to play in the Orange Bowl if it all shakes out. I said off the air, and folks watching on YouTube, I am wearing this shirt for a reason, because they need a little orange help to get to that point. But Buck, if you'd have told me 2 years ago, after coming off 5 wins in 2 years, and they hired Mack Brown, which I love to hire. Don't get me wrong. We talked about it. Jason, you still on the hook a little bit for that one. But you come around. You've come around. But this team can play in the Orange Bowl on January 2nd, I believe it is. What in the hell's going on, man? I mean, is this real life? Seriously, Carolina football fans have to ask that question. Is it real life?
Well, here's kind of where I would go with that topic. Just thinking about previous UNC coaching regimes, and I wasn't a huge Larry Fedora critic. I tended to err on the side of supporting Fedora more often than being critical. But what I'm seeing now, and I hope it's not a hallucination, is that what North Carolina looks like they're doing looks to be sustainable. And I never got that feeling with Fedora. I think with Fedora, it was, if he's got the right quarterback and he's got the right offense, he's got the right pieces around that quarterback, then they can be really good. but with Mack, I feel like the things he's doing on defense and recruiting, trying to get the special teams thing sorted out, the offensive line development, different aspects of every corner of the program, really, that as long as he keeps that focus where it is and continues along those lines, I don't expect this Orange Bowl trip to be a one-off in the future. And I don't think it'll be another, 70 years since North Carolina's been to a major bowl. And particularly the implications of the Miami game. If you look at it, Miami is probably North Carolina's major competition in the Coastal, for the next several years. I mean, Virginia Tech might be good again or good next year. Who knows? Virginia under Bronco is going to be Virginia under Bronco. Georgia Tech has been recruiting fairly decently, and they might make some noise next year. We don't know. But North Carolina is going to be a player in the Coastal for the foreseeable future. If the Coastal Championship is probably going to have to come through Chapel Hill. If you're going to win, you're going to have to take care of North Carolina to get there. And that's going to be a change for everybody because the Coastal Division was, for so long, whoever happened to be hot that year, it wasn't sustainable one year to the next. 7 different champions in 7 years. So as odd and as surreal as it feels for North Carolina to be going to the Orange Bowl, I really don't expect that to be an uncommon thing in the years to come.
Jason, I think the point, and I agree 100% with Buck, and this is what makes it different. We've seen college football teams that can put up points. I mean, that's just a thing these days. Teams can score left and right, but the ones that can play defense are the ones that are good or the ones that are elite or that next level. And that, to me, watching, both this performance yesterday by the young guys and the talk about, look at that stat sheet. Well, 2 of them are gone next year. The rest are back. That's where it's at, I think, for me. And watching it is it's not a, and I want to say a fake mirage is a oxymoron, but it's not a mirage in that it just feels like, wow, they're really good, but they're not. You know what I mean? I mean, you follow what I'm trying to say there. Mack is building it from the inside, from the lines out, rather than from the skill in. And I think that's what makes the difference here and makes it real.
Yeah, it's the difference between building for the program to hit a few peaks here and there. Like, okay, we're going to have our guys all kind of peak at the right time and have a good chance at making some noise, and building a program that has a very strong foundation that's going to say, look, we're going to set the floor right here. This is where we're going to be year in, year out, just because all of these things are sound. The foundation is sound. And once you have that, then all you need is a few other pieces to click, and that's when you have the big year. But it's basically saying, look, we're gonna set ourselves up where the foundation is 9-10 wins. That's what we're setting as kind of come into the year and expect that, because there's going to be 9 teams on the schedule that shouldn't be able to beat us. And then, well, if the quarterback is that dude, and if you got a couple other pieces, then maybe something more special. And that's the thing. To be an elite, complete teams win championships. That's what you're getting at about being good on offense. I mean, you get teams that are great on defense, and you've always heard, people have always heard or said, defense wins championships. No, it doesn't. Great defense without enough offense just means you get beat by less. But complete teams Offense, defense, special teams are the teams that win championships. So you got to build a strong foundation, and generally inside out, on both sides of the ball. And once you've done that, when you're building a complete team where each unit kind of works together in harmony with the others, then, okay, well, this year didn't have a good year. 9 wins, Gator Bowl or whatever. Okay. And then the next year, well, a few turnovers went our way and all that. The 50-50 games we lost last year, those went our way. 12-1 college football playoff. But it's being in that position to where your 50-50 games are the games with the other tops of your conference, and you're taking care of business against the rest because you've got that strong foundation where there's going to be a level of consistency built in because you're complete. And when the defense has a bit of an off day, the offense is going to be good enough to make up for that. And when, the skill position guys are not able to just dominate, you're good enough on the interior to be able to handle your business and win in workmanlike fashion. Or when they're good enough to handle you on the inside, you've got that one guy that's a problem out there that they can't cover. It's having all of those little pieces in place that fit together to make a complete program. And that's really Mack knows how to build it. He's done it multiple times now. And in my defense, going back to the Mack hire, I did say I'm wait and see. I'm not real optimistic because
coordinators,
coaches who've been hired from the coaching booth and all that in the past and guys who've returned, that sort of thing has not often gone well. But I want to see who he hires with the coordinators. Can he get? And I said I want to see offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and strength and conditioning. And can he get top-notch guys at all three? And if he can get top-notch guys at all three, then this is a home run hire because the guy can flat out recruit and he's all the things you'd want as a CEO. Well, check.
I went down the line too with Gillespie and Galloway and Searles, all those guys.
Yeah, and I tell you what, how satisfying must it have been for Searles to have his unit do what they did against a team that he coached. He coached
and who was
Diaz.
widely criticized, when he came to Carolina. The Miami fans were all over him. Oh, y'all are going to so suck on the offensive line.
How satisfying. I saw that they cut to him at one point on the sideline, and you could see this look after one of those runs where the offensive line was just dominant. And you could see him just kind of like, yup, that's my boys, knowing that he was taking it to a former employer. And that there's something really satisfying about that, I'm sure.
What about if you're Manny Diaz? What if the Mack Brown firing you is like the second worst thing he did to you on national television?
Here's one of the things that I'm curious about, and this is more of an off-season project. If I can get my hands on that old BYU Texas tape, because BYU ran for like 600 yards or 500 yards against Manny Diaz. What was it?
550.
550. They ran that against Mack Brown and Texas when Manny Diaz was the coordinator at Texas. And generally he had success as a coordinator at Texas until that last year, but they could not stop the run that year. And that BYU game really exposed them. I want to go back and take a look at what BYU did a lot of it with Taysom Hill at quarterback, so they ran the quarterback a good bit more. But I want to take a look at what they did in terms of schematically on the running game, because
it's probably
I had this thought about midway through the third quarter of,
maybe Mack and Phil had already done that and figured out what BYU did against Manny.
Well, head coaches know what their coordinators do better than anybody else. And they know where the weaknesses are. They know where the skeletons are buried, or where the skeletons are and where the bodies are buried. And you got to think Mack is going, okay, I know what gave Manny the most trouble when he was my coordinator. And I think we can do some of the. You got to think that they repped a bunch of the same stuff, the same looks, knowing that they were going to get the same things. I got to go back and take a look at that at some point in the offseason, because this was absolutely Mack, like, you embarrassed me. You embarrassed me when I was at Texas. And now I'm gonna do to you what you had done to us, what you caused to be done to us, because your defense couldn't stop it when we did this. So here's how we're gonna handle it. I'm gonna put another 550 yards on you, rushing yards on you, because I know how it was done then, and we're gonna do it again.
Yeah, it was pretty clear that there were statements being made. I mean, Mack talked about it post game about the thanks for the bulletin board material, ESPN, by throwing Miami and Texas A&M in the Orange Bowl before the game was played and those type things. Look, we talk about how nice a man Mack Brown is and how he's, you know, like
he's a stone cold killer, guys.
Yeah, he comes across very nice and very personable, but when it comes to stuff like this, like you said, just stone cold. Buck, you know, we haven't even talked about the offense that much in detail. Javante's run, we don't really need to. Sam Howell was fantastic, like he always is. Michael Carter, man, that running the football is the second best part of Michael Carter, in my opinion. I mean, what a great ambassador for Carolina continues to be. That interview with Maria Taylor was pretty awesome. I mean, the man asked permission to go run and take a picture with his team. Just a very cool guy and a hell of a football player. But wrap it up for us, or let's start wrapping it up. ACC championship game, Clemson and Notre Dame. I know that burns in the craw of a lot of people, a lot of traditional ACC people. Kind of is what it is, but your thoughts?
Well, North Carolina would be playing in that game this weekend. And, you know, we talked about this when Notre Dame crashed the party at the ACC, that it would be very ironic if North Carolina would have been in the ACC championship game, if not for Notre Dame. I think I'm absolutely correct that UNC would have played in a championship game with 2 losses, because their closest contender would have been Miami or NC State. So they beat both of them. They won the head-to-head. So anyway, that's interesting. But I think because we're coming up on it, I'd like to close out by maybe saying that the Miami game is probably the greatest recruiting video that Mack Brown could have. If you're young and talented, I'm going to play you. If you're a great running back from the state of North Carolina, well, you know, I just have got 2 on my team that are over 100 yards per game, 2 of them. You know, recruiting, you know, all of these games like this, North Carolina doesn't recruit head-to-head against Miami very often, if at all. But the wider message on national TV, everybody's watching. And today on all the websites, everybody's talking about it. I think as far as for recruiting purposes, getting a win may be one of the bigger implications of this game in the fashion that they got it. I don't think they're going to run into some of the obstacles they have in the past at certain position groups.
It's
I gotta put this on air. I just saw Jaquarius Conley tweeted, "The best funeral I've been to. Just happy I was in white and blue."
Well, according to hat tip to Taylor Vipolis tweet, Carolina missed 5 tackles yesterday, and Connolly led the team with an 84.9 tackling grade. Freshman.
I'd like to see those numbers for Miami.
Whew.
It was more than 5, Buck.
Probably more than 5, you think?
Yeah, like you said, Jason, especially in the second half, a lot of business decisions being made by Miami on that field. And, I think for everybody to talk about how Miami is Carolina's competition in the Coastal, assuming we go back to the normal divisions and all, and then for Carolina to make a statement like that. And like I said, to do it like they did, I think that matters even more than winning. To do it like they did, just straight bully boy football, big boy bully boy football. Incredible day for Carolina football. Don't know if it could have gone any better. Not quite sure how it could have. 8-3 on the season. We wait for Tuesday night, the college football playoff rankings, and then we wait for December 20th for the next matchup. I tell you what, a Texas A&M matchup in the Orange Bowl. Good gracious. You talking about stepping up to the big time. It'll be that. Look forward to Buck's column today. Look forward to Jason's work all week, the breakdowns. Yeah, it's going to be a fun week at Inside Carolina. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not a premium subscriber, and make sure you're there on the message boards, and make sure you support Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Boys, it's been a pleasure. We've always said it. These are always more fun when Carolina wins the ball game, and that'll be a wrap on this season. Thanks, Buck. Thanks,
20
Jay.
missed tackles from Miami.
Always fun, guys. Always fun.
Look, last question. Can you miss a tackle if you don't even try?
How many? I'm guessing that that those don't even count. So there's more than 20 in there.
If you run out of the area where the ball
which we saw
carrier is.
Business decisions don't go into that. 20 missed tackles, 25 business decisions. All right, boys. It's been fun.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Later.
Thanks.